Hello there and welcome to LearnBytes, the show that delivers bite-sized pieces of wisdom so you can learn how to increase your efficiency and productivity, embrace your natural creativity and lead with impact. I'm Samantha Garrett from Using Technology Better, and I'm super excited today to be inviting onto the show Tal Evans. So Tal is from Majestic Computer Technology. He's the CEO there, and he has some amazing wisdom to share with us on the show today. So without further ado, let's jump in, meet Tal, and get this show on the road. Hi Tal, thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Hi there, how are you, Sam?
I am very well. I'm excited for our conversation. I've been looking forward to it all day.
So am I. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you are welcome. So I've already let our audience know just a little bit about you, where you're from and your role. But you are here to talk on leadership. But before we do that, I'd love you to share more about yourself, what you're passionate about your work. So something you'd like to share on that?
Yes, look, absolutely. So, Samantha, it's like this. I've been in the IT industry with a short hiatus at some point in time of a few years, but for over three decades now. And when I started in the IT industry as a young fellow still in high school, I had all sorts of misconceptions. I had some misconceptions about why people may or may not find the things that I'm interested in exciting. Um, and I also had some misconceptions about what business and life of running a business is all about. And as I've grown older, I came to the realization that for me, there needs to be more to it than running a business for the purpose of profit. Needless to say, profit is something that happens, but it's not something in and of itself. So when we seek to engage with our clients today, when I'm looking at who do we want to work with, I'm looking for organizations that have more of a purpose. And it could be a healthcare focus, it could be a social service focus, but organizations that are doing more than just, and they could be, by the way, in any other field, but they're doing more than just going through the motions of delivering whatever it is that they're doing. There is some social aspect, some good that they do for society more broadly. And that makes us really excited to be involved in that.
I love that. That's that. It's like profit, but with a purpose, isn't it? Like it's just so much more than the money. And I love that you came to that, realization.
Yeah. Somebody asked me a long time ago, what would you want to be written on your tombstone? Or what would you want them to say about you when you retire? And I said, look, I'd love to be able to help 10 other people achieve success in their own businesses by the time I retire. And I'd love for there to be some more meaning to my life than just doing the work that I do. I know it may sound a little cliche, but it's genuinely what I've come to believe and do and practice every day.
Yeah, that's we've had a pre-session chat, and I'm hearing you say that to me for the second time still touches me in the same way it did the first time. Like, yeah, I really just think that's such a admirable way to look at it, and an admirable way to serve others as well. So yeah, thanks, Tal. And that's why I'm actually super excited to talk to you about leadership today, to know that you're coming from that lens to the topic. Can't wait to hear what wisdom you've got for us.
Not sure about the wisdom, but I'll do my best.
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be nuggets of wisdom in there. I will find them. I promise you. I've found one in every single interview I've done so far. So I doubt you're going to be the first one that I don't find any.
Right. Fantastic.
So on that note, shall we jump into the speed round?
Jump into whatever you'd like. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to get the timer ready. We've got 8 leadership questions in 4 minutes. And then after that, we'll have a bit of a chat. So I'll try and give you a 1-minute warning if I'm not too enthralled in the amazing things you're saying. So get ready. Good to go?
Sure.
All righty. First mobile phone and current phone.
My first mobile phone was a Motorola Brick that incidentally I left on the roof of the car one day And as I drove off, I watched it as another car behind me drove straight on top of it. It was a very expensive exercise because those
Oh
things
no.
weren't cheap back then. My current phone is an iPhone 12 Pro. Um, I haven't quite made the leap to the 13 yet, though no doubt it's going to happen soon.
I'm going to have to ask you a question about that brick phone at the end. What is the most important quality for every leader to have?
I'd say serving the people that you are leading. Um, I don't know that there is really one in particular. I'd say it's important to have empathy. It's important um, to act as a mentor, and it's important to ensure that you are bringing people up as you carry on in whatever it is that you're doing in the leadership context.
What do you find most rewarding or most challenging about being a leader?
Well, I have to say the most rewarding thing is having watched people over the course of 30 years that I've worked with in a variety of different capacities grow and succeed in their own capacity. I still get really touched when 20 years later I get an email from somebody who I employed 20 years ago saying, you know, you gave me my first job in IT, and look where I am now, and a piece of me is thanks to you. That's incredibly rewarding. Um, Probably the most challenging thing is to remain upbeat and I won't say motivated because I'm motivated regardless of the circumstances, but to be in good spirit and um, playing out the my life in a way that is going to inspire other people to get the
Mm.
most out of themselves. Um, we all as human beings have off days. I think it goes without saying, and I'm human, so that naturally happens to me as well. And whilst it's important to make sure that the people whom I'm working with also see that I'm human and that I have my
Mm.
off days, it's important not to let that affect them. So
Interesting.
whatever I do when I present a view, for example, in a conversation with a team member or what have you, and share with them that I'm not feeling well, or I'm not 100%, or I'm not really on the ball, and this is the human element speaking out. But I
Mm.
need to always couch that in, but look, everything will be okay. We're
Yeah.
all going to be okay, particularly over the last 18 months with everything that we've been through. Um, Keeping that balance and making sure that I don't finish off the conversation with, well, things are not that great, but rather,
Mm.
they might not be great this instant, but they are going to be great. So
Yeah.
that optimism piece is incredibly important and sometimes challenging.
Yeah. What do you tell yourself when facing uncertainty?
Well, I think I've just answered that question.
I was
I
thinking
think
that too.
uh, I have enough life experience that tells me that no matter what happens, um, I'll manage to sort them out.
We're going to come back to that because I think that's so powerful. Now, the time has gone off, but I want to ask you another question. So I'm going to be
Go for it.
cheeky. Go. The
Okay.
biggest leadership lesson you've learned so far?
I learned a long time ago from a mentor who is no longer alive that no matter uh, no matter where you are, what vocation you have, where you are in within an organization, people have a significant amount to give. You just need to give them an opportunity to share the things that they have to give.
Wow.
Experiences come from all walks of life. I know and have known for a long time that I'm not necessarily always right. In fact, I would much rather surround myself with a whole lot of people who are right more often than I am. Otherwise, we're not going anywhere. if I'm the only one that's right. So give people the opportunity and the space to share their experiences and their opinion, um, and don't let your own experiences cloud or color uh, whatever it is that you are letting through, because that often, more often than not, will result in a lesser outcome than you could have if you don't behave that way and let people say their piece and actually listen.
Yeah. So much wisdom. I've just got to say it. Thank you.
Well,
And
okay,
we and that
I'm
was
going to
only
blast soon.
that's only in 5 questions. We didn't even have to get to the 8, and I got stacks of
Right.
value. That's fantastic. I it's super interesting because I like to look for themes, and the key theme that I saw coming through there was about others, which is linked so strongly with what you said at the start, about you wanting to help others and build people up. But that's such that theme that I saw coming through in your answers, even to the point of when you talked about the upbeat and the optimism in terms of the impact that that has on others. So I think linking that to that point you just said about everyone has, and I don't know if value was the word you used, but everyone has something to give, I think is what you said, no matter what, in the organization. So I'm really curious about how you go about uncovering what that person has to give, because so often in my work in the past, I've seen people that are struggling in particular roles, and so often the organization leave them in those roles instead of supporting them to find what they are amazing at in doing that. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that kind of conundrum and how that you would handle that.
Lots. So you probably touched on two things in when you raised the question or the topic, and I'll tackle the first one first. And you spoke about how do you go about giving people the opportunity to speak, share their opinion, and what have you. And to me, that's reasonably straightforward and simple. When somebody comes to me as a leader and says something like, "Hey, Tal, I've got this particular challenge here. What do you think that we should do in this particular case?" And it doesn't really matter what the problem is. It could be any number of things. What do you think we should do? Uh, my immediate response, and my team already know that that's certainly those who have worked with me for some time know that that's my typical response. And that is, well, what would you do?
Mhm.
And it opens up the individual then to have a conversation about what it is that's going on through their mind. Now, at this point in time, uh, there is a potential challenge that's presented, because if the response that to what would you do from a team member is perhaps not aligned with how I would go about it,
Yeah.
I have a choice to make. And I make that choice invariably um, in favor of the opinion presented by the team member,
Hmm.
even if it may yield an outcome that I perceive to be less useful for our organization, or one that is going to present some additional challenges. I find, just like I do with my children, just like I'm sure my parents have with me, that telling somebody that the fire is hot is not enough to deter them from putting their hand on the flame,
Yes.
because you need to learn a lot of things for yourself. And
Yeah.
the same goes for business, and the same goes for anything throughout all of our walks of life. So telling somebody how to do something is not going to help them learn. You can
Mhm.
guide and provide some advice along the way, but let people use their own creativity, their own natural abilities to propose and follow through with the ideas that they have, which then ultimately give them a greater opportunity to understand and learn through experience.
Mm.
Because it's very hard for people to learn through somebody else's experience. Yes, granted, we go to university and we learn all sorts of things that somebody else has figured out before, and it could be theories, it could be mathematical
Yeah.
equations, it could be, programming languages, or whatever it is that we're involved in doing. And I'm not taking anything away from that, but life's not just about theories. Life can only be learned and lived through experiences.
Yeah.
And if we want to get the most, certainly in a business context, if I want to get the most out of my team, it's incredibly important to ensure that I give them the room and the opportunity to suggest what they would do. Now, I find that once
Mm.
I've done that a few times, in fact, I had a team member who has been with us at that point probably about 6 months, and he would come and ask, "Okay, so what do you think about this?" And I would say, "Well, what would you do?" And the sixth time we had a conversation, and he said, "What would you do in this case?" He stopped for a moment and he said, "Hang on, you're now going to tell me what would you do?" And I said, "Yeah, that's exactly right. So what would you do?" And we discussed it, and he went along and did it. Now, and here's the clincher: no good giving people the opportunity to present their view and letting them go along with it if you're not prepared to give them the opportunity and the room to fail,
Mm.
because invariably from time to time they will, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And as a leader, you need to be there to pick them up when that happens, so that they don't feel miserable, so that they
Mm.
don't feel like they're useless or worthless or whatever the case may be, because they're not. I've, I've, I've made the choice to have that individual involved in our organization because I saw something there. And no doubt over the course of 3 decades, I've made some mistakes along the way in hiring as well, but they've been very few and far between. But understanding that people are going to make errors, to make mistakes, and some of those mistakes are going to be costly, and being prepared not just to give them the room to make their own choices, but allowing for those mistakes and those errors to happen and supporting them through that is incredibly important, because that's how you get the most out of people.
That's such a powerful way of looking at supporting others to grow. Because I think so many leaders say, oh, so I'm all about my team growing or supporting them, but very few would do exactly what you've just said and actually give them the space to fail and then pick them up afterwards, even if it's at the cost of the business. Because so often I hear, you hear that, well, oh, sure, failure is kind of given this kind of lip service, but hang on, the moment it's going to actually impact on something deeper, oh, no, 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 that's all off. Like, sure, we'll hear your opinion, but no, won't let you act on it. So that's like actually taking it to that deep level of, I love that you said you can't learn from someone else's experience. So that's such an interesting approach. Fascinating.
Uh, I think it's really simple that my theory, and it's not really my theory. I'm sure that other people have said it before me, but the foundation for the way in which I behave and the way in which I choose to lead is predicated on the fact that leadership in and of itself requires the individual, the leader, to not just be empathetic and to have integrity and to have the ability to communicate well and to have self-awareness and to be grateful or to have gratitude and to be able to listen and to have agility and to have influence and all those great words that everybody espouses when they talk about leadership. Um, it's about building and uh, inspiring people to be the best version of themselves that they can be. Which then leads me to the second part of the response to the second part of your question, um, and that is, well, what happens if somebody is not particularly good in their role, or they want to change roles? Well, at Majestic we encourage that. So if somebody wants to do something different, we'll look at ways of how to go about making that happen. Now, of course, there are economic realities that are
Yeah.
attached to those kind of decisions. And we need to ensure that if somebody is going to shift their focus and do something else, that we have a way to pay for that, because that
Mm.
individual needs to continue to receive a salary. but it's typically an evolutionary process. It doesn't happen overnight unless
Yeah.
there is a very specific role into which that individual can move into directly. And I would certainly encourage that. People, in order to get the most out of them, in order for all of us to get the most out of ourselves, we need to be happy to get up in the morning and go and do the things that we want to do. It's not, I'd hate to think that somebody's working with me just for a paycheck.
Mm, yeah. And actually, that actually makes me really sad, even that possibility. And I always feel when I have spoken to people, all through my life, and they're really miserable in their work, but I speak to some people and now I'm just riding it out till I get long service or just till I get this. And I think that is such a sad place to be in. And yeah, you wouldn't wish it upon anyone to be able to spend what we do, such a great part of our life, just to be receiving a paycheck, even if we're miserable in it, because we're not doing us a service or anyone else a service either in that case.
Uh, Look, absolutely. I think in bygone times, in my parents or their parents' generation, that was very much a done thing.
Mm.
You went to work somewhere, uh, and often people had one single career, and not necessarily just one single career, but potentially one single employer
Yeah.
over the course of their working lives. And at 25 or 30 or 40 years down the track, they got their golden watch and off they went into retirement,
Yeah.
uh, unfulfilled and with their potential still intact.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly unfortunate. It's
Yeah.
such a sad way to live the the more gainful part of your life.
Mm.
That I couldn't imagine doing that to anybody. Um,
Yeah.
in the same way that we welcome people with open arms when they choose to come I feel privileged to have the team that I have today. When they choose to come to work with me, it's incredibly rewarding. But by the same time, I also acknowledge the fact that from time to time, there may be things that I'm not necessarily in a position to provide,
Mm.
and there may be experiences that they can gain from going elsewhere, and that's okay. And part of leadership and the traits of leadership is also about understanding how to give people the space to say, well, you know what, I need to go and try something else, and not to be resentful,
Mm.
not to make life hard on them, but really to let them go with open arms in the same way that
Yeah.
they came in, because life is short and the world is round, and you meet again another day.
So true. I love that. I'm going to have that as a quote. It's gorgeous.
Go for it.
Yeah, that's thank you. As with our last discussion, I feel so enriched having listened to your wisdom. So thank you so much for sharing it. I really appreciate it.
Uh, well, I'm happy to be here sharing it with you, and
Thank
so
you.
thank you too.
I do have one last question I want to sneak in. I'm going to be cheeky
Go
because
on.
I was keen to know.
Yeah.
So one of the last questions in the speed round that we didn't get to, but I always like to know for my own selfish purposes, is if you had a book or a video or a podcast or something you would recommend to others to read or listen to.
Oh wow. For many years now, I went through a really difficult time in my life, in business, and by extension in my personal life, because running a business is very much an integral part of my life. I went through an incredibly difficult time just over a decade ago, about 11 years ago now, and somebody gave me a book entitled "Don't Sweat the Small Stuff."
Hmm.
Sorry, don't sweat the little things.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and it's full of all sorts of wisdoms and sayings. It's not a terribly big book. It's not. I mean, I've read plenty of business books and theories and you name it. And I'm sure you've had people in your podcast that have have spoken ad nauseum about all these really great books by really great authors. And at the end of the day, when we get to a certain point in our life, and I'm no religious person, but when we meet our maker, none of those things ultimately really matter.
Mm.
What really matters is how did we lead and live each day of our lives, and whether we were satisfied with it. And what I've realized a long time ago is that there are very few things that are really, really, truly, genuinely important in life. And they predominantly revolve around family.
Mm.
And for me, it's my wife and it's my children and so on. But as long as everybody is healthy,
Mm.
we're living a good life, and we're true to ourselves, all the rest of the stuff is going to sort itself out.
Yeah.
Worrying about it doesn't put us in a mindset to address and really resolve the issues. Understanding that we have the capacity to get there, even if we may not know how we're going to get there, is absolutely integral to ensuring that we don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
The moment you get stressed out over something, you stop being rational, and you stop thinking thinking rationally about
Yeah.
how to go about resolving that particular problem, that conflict, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just I'm not necessarily saying be content with everything, because being content doesn't necessarily spur us as human beings to do better. But be at peace with what's going on and
Yeah.
concentrate on how to move on to the next step.
Which links so nicely to that optimism piece you sent earlier about basically you'll figure everything out. Everything will be okay, and you will be able to find a way to figure out what needs to be figured out.
We're incredibly resilient as people.
Yeah.
That's and there's a fellow, I don't know whether you know him. He used to be a parliamentarian, and represented Australia um, in the United States as an official representative for a number of years. He's no longer in politics, but has become involved for many years now with an organization that he founded that centers itself around optimism. Fellow's name's Victor Purton. Yeah.
Yes. Is that the one that Noreen and Jenny are involved in, Tal, that we had on the show
Uh,
earlier?
yeah.
Project
Yes,
Optimism.
they are. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I
And
do know. Yes.
yeah, there you go. And I find that what Victor espouses, and by extension, the work of Project Optimism with Jenny Boyle and Noreen, um, there's so much truth
Mm.
for everyone, for all of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And I think particularly again over the course of the last, what is it now, nearly 2 years, or certainly over a year and a half of the current pandemic, I've heard so many people that unfortunately grab their shovel and dig themselves a hole,
Mm.
rather than realizing that in history humans have endured so much more than what we're
Yeah.
having to go through now. We're so incredibly um, lucky to be living life in the 21st century, with
Yeah.
all of the technology and medicine that we have available to us for us today. In centuries and that have gone by, people died of far less. And yes, I know
Mm.
that some people unfortunately died this time around, but for the most part, the majority of the population have managed to get away without
Yeah.
something as significant as what we saw, for example, during the Spanish flu,
Yeah.
when 500 million people were infected and 50 million people perished. We didn't have these kind of numbers. So we should consider ourselves incredibly lucky.
Yeah.
And if we concentrate on those things and leave our minds open because we're concentrating on the positives, we've got a far greater likelihood of achieving success than if we grab that shovel and dig a hole.
Yeah. It always comes back to me, the concept. My boss at Using Technology Better says it to us all the time. He said, we create a reality, you know, our thoughts create a reality. So whichever path we go down, whether that be optimism, whether that be pessimism and digging that hole, that is the reality we create for ourselves. And we always have that choice.
I think the saying goes something like, whatever it is that you're thinking is going to happen, you're most probably correct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I heard that one too. And it is, that's exactly right. Yeah, I think that's a lovely note to finish up on, Tal, and just thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today and share that. I know there's so much valuable information and just things to ponder for people to take away with. So thanks so much. And before
look, it's been incredibly lovely talking to you too. So it goes both ways.
Thank you. That's very kind. Before we wrap up though, where could people connect with you, find you, learn more about your organization and your work?
Well, look, it's really simple. Our website or URL is www.majestic.com.au. And on our website, you'll find all of our contact details, phone numbers, and general email addresses, and so on. People can learn a lot from our website, but that's often quite a lot to grasp. There's a fair amount of content there. I do have over time a number of videos of me talking about various topics that matter to us as an organization, and there's a whole blog section on our website. So if people want to understand how they can identify with what it is that we do and why we do the things we do, that's certainly some way to go. But I will finish off with this. There are in Melbourne alone some 1,400 IT services firms that support the small and medium enterprise, the SME sector. 1,400. That's a fairly highly contested landscape for people in my field, and we've taken the view that doing the technology piece is a given. If you can't do that, get out of the kitchen. We take it one step further and we make commitments to our clients that if they work with us, we will help them with whatever it is that their goals are. And that could be make more money. It could be support more patients with the money that they already have. Or it could be deliver an outcome in a social enterprise or a social service context to twice as many people as they are today. Whatever those goals are, we will attach our service delivery and the outcomes from our services to those goals and hold ourselves accountable based on that. And not many service organizations make a call like that, but that's what we do.
And I remember you described that to me as a partnership, and that just speaks so true to it.
And incidentally, I can also be found on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn handle is just my name, Tal Evans, so reasonably easy to find.
Awesome. And we'll link all that below, of course, anyway. So
sure.
Well, thanks once again for your time. Enjoy what's left of the sunshine outside, because I know we were commenting on that
Thank
earlier. No worries. So we'll sign off now for everyone. Bye. See you later. Hello again. Thank you so much for tuning in to that episode. I so loved that conversation with Tal. I'm so pleased that I could bring that to you and that he was so open to sharing his wisdom with you on the show. So many things that I could pick up and run with, but I think the key thing I really want to highlight is that idea of, as a leader, giving your team that space to actually fail. That, you know, Tal said that we don't learn from other people's experiences. We learn from actually getting in there and experiencing ourselves. And I think that was such a powerful message. So I'd love to hear what your key takeaways are. Feel free to leave a comment below or reply if you're seeing this on Instagram or YouTube or wherever you are, and let us know what you loved as the takeaway. So before we wrap up, a little bit of housekeeping. If you are watching the show on YouTube and you haven't already subscribed to the Using Technology Better YouTube channel, make sure to do that before you leave. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast app, or even one that's not your favorite, you can follow the show there too, so you get notified of all the latest episodes. And of course, there's always a little fortnightly newsletter if you want to have a little bit of a hello from me every fortnight with efficiency and productivity tips. The link to that is below, along with that book as well that Tal recommended. So that's it from me for today, but I will see you again soon for another bite-sized piece of the learning adventure that is life. See you then.